poppin', y'all? It is your boy Gardi3, and welcome to the Coffee and Sports Morning Show. I apologize. We were having some technical difficulties. We're running a little late. Hey, that's all right, though. Joining, of course, it's not really my morning show. He's the foundation of the morning show. He is Mo Better. How you doing, Mo?
Hey, good morning, Brett. Good morning, chat. Hi, Key. Good morning. Good morning, Kyle. Appreciate everybody joining us.
No, absolutely. And I feel like we kind of have to start with last night, right? Because that was just pure insanity. Game 1 of the NBA Finals, Thunder Pacers, and it was better than advertised. We thought it'd be a good game. Turned out Game 1, we got an instant classic. Say, it's a good old Pacers story. Thunder go up 15. Pacers proceed to walk them down and steal Game 1 from them. So, Mo, what did you think about Game 1? What are some things you observed from that?
I felt like I was watching two different games. In the first half, Indiana couldn't have played worse with all the turnovers. Record number of turnovers. When you have that many turnovers, you're supposed to get blown out by 30 or more. And the crazy thing is the Thunder could not execute off those turnovers. They only got 11 points off of over 25 turnovers. That's crazy. And yet and still, they're in control of the game. They go up 15. Indiana goes on a run. They respond. And on the steal by J-Dub, they're up 15 again. And you're thinking they're back in control. And I felt like even when they went up 15, the Pacers were playing with confidence. And you could see it. And all of a sudden, Obi catches fire from 3. Miles Turner comes alive. Miles Turner had been silent the entire game, and he wakes up. But I really thought a pivotal moment, maybe a sequence, was late in the game watching Andrew Nembhard go at it versus SGA. Like, Nembhard bumped him. He was physical with him. There was a moment after a play where he just intentionally ran into him and bumped it. Like, I thought Nembhard got fired up. And I thought his defense down the stretch was outstanding. He bodied up SGA multiple times down the stretch. And he crossed him and hit the deep 3. Like, Nembhard was on one. Like, Hallie's going to get credit, obviously, for hitting the game winner. But it's Nembhard, what he did on both ends of the floor. Don't forget, Nembhard didn't just play defense. Late in that game, Halliburton was not the one orchestrating the offense. It was Nembhard. And that was something that Rick Carlisle did. He changed that up. So, again, look, I was stunned by how easily OKC came apart late. And you can tell they were coming apart because as you, I, and Coach were watching, what do OKC do when they get nervous, when it gets tight? They completely abandon their offense and just go SGA-centric. They don't move the ball anymore. Nobody else is cutting or doing anything. They're just watching him play. I thought that played into the Pacers' hands as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the moment where I thought, like, oh, this really might happen, isn't it? It was as soon as Miles Turner banked in a sidestep 3, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This might be the Pacers doing it again. It was absolutely absurd because the Pacers, I think they benefited from a lot of those turnovers being a lot of dead ball turnovers, so the Thunder didn't get to run the break on a lot of those turnovers, and when they did, the Pacers made sure to get back and execute defensively. So I've never seen a game like that where a team has like a plus 18 turnover advantage and still loses. It was wild, but honestly, that just kind of defines Pacer basketball. Just wild and unpredictable.
I like the way you said that. I think that's a good way to describe the Pacers. As that game played out, I really did start to think the Pacers are giving me, and I've heard somebody else say this, and I believe it too, they're giving me the same vibe as the 2011 Mavericks. I'm getting that kind of vibe, that no matter the deficit, no matter the situation, they always find a way to make a run and find a way to get a win. And I know Hallie and Dirk are two completely different players. I'm talking about just the feel of the teams overall. They're struggling, and suddenly the best shooter on the floor is Obi Toppin, and he can't miss. And because Obi Toppin can't miss, what does Dagnov do? He switches out and he puts Lou Dort on him to shut down OB. That would come back to haunt them. When they made that switch late in the game, and by Indiana not calling a timeout, Lou Dort was on Obi, and Casey Wallace, who's a good defender, but he's not Lou Dort, was on Hallie late in that game. And I thought, as good a defender as Casey Wallace is, he made a fundamental flaw, a mistake in that he never jumped on Halliburton's strong hand to make him go back the other way. And I thought that was a mistake. And look, credit to Halliburton, because I think he froze him. He froze him and Caruso with a slight hesitation, because once Siakam cuts back door and Caruso reacts, he pulls up. He does it all in one motion. And that's all on Halliburton. That's just a great play by a great player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, the fun part about this one too is obviously everybody's got to remember this series is far from over. The same thing happened in the Denver series. Game 1, some insane comeback happens to defeat the Thunder, but remember what happened in Game 2? The Thunder responded in a big way and blew out the Nuggets. So if you're the Pacers, you just cannot get too comfortable and, think, all right, yeah, one game, good enough. Like, if you take them easy at all in Game 2, it's going to be a completely different result.
I agree, but I will say this. This is also a factor that we talked about. We talked about this before the finals. OKC comes into this finals an overwhelming favorite, which means they have a different kind of pressure. Indiana is playing with house money. They have no pressure, none at all. They've been told that they're coming there basically to be a sacrificial lamb. And then OKC loses game 1, and the way they lost down the stretch, I think that does get into your head. Remember, their core, SGA's 26. But I believe, Chet's 21, 22, J-Dub's 22, 23, Lou Dort's 24. They're a young basketball team. And I know that's why they brought in Ihart, who's a young veteran, and a guy like Caruso. But late in that game, I thought they started to show their youth. I thought they changed their offense and how they play offense. Instead of it being more about body movement and player movement, it was ISO ball, give it to SGA and everybody get out the way. And I think they got away from what they did. They got away from being who they are. They got away from being who they are early in the game. What did Mark Dagnov do right off the bat? He didn't start the lineup he didn't go with the double bigs because he didn't feel like he could play with the double bigs because of how fast the Pacers played. I think you have to be who you are and play your style, and then find out whether or not you have to make adjustments. He kind of blinked early on, and I think that did affect the game. Look, we can talk about the first half all we want. I'm just judging off of what I saw the last 10 minutes of the game. The last 10 minutes of the game, even when they were behind, Indiana looked like the more confident team.
And I think going back to the double big lineup in the second half, probably would have been fine because, obviously, the small ball lineup worked in the first half. They forced 19 turnovers in the first half. But in the second half, they were not getting turnovers. They got 6 turnovers in the second half. So I think once kind of the turnover well started drying up, and that just kind of, killed the small ball lineup. If you're not turning the ball over, then we started to see Turner, Siakam, and even Obi Toppin start to leverage their size inside on that lineup. So I think they just got to be more quicker to pull the trigger on getting out of that small ball lineup if it's not working in game 2.
Yeah, look on SGA's miss late in the game. Had you had one of your bigs in there, I think you would have had a better chance to get offensive rebounds. There's a play where Nembhard does a tough pull-up, and it's an air ball, and Siakam is able to catch it and stick it back in because there's no size in the game at all. And I think that hurt them late in the game. I'm not one of those people that go, well, this means because Indiana won game 1, they're going to win the series. It was a stunning upset. But I am the person that said this. If Indiana can walk in there punch OKC in the mouth and find a way to win game one, it absolutely flips the series. And I think now you can have a series. I understand what OKC was able to do against Denver in game two. The difference is Indiana's a completely different animal. No, they don't have Joker, but they play at a different pace, and they play in a way where everybody on the floor is an offensive threat. Like when you watch the game, look at Indiana's numbers. Nobody had 20 points, but they had like 5 or 6 guys that had 14, 15, 16 points. That's team basketball, and they won the game that way. Like Hallie didn't have a great game. He had a great finish. I thought Nembhard was a beast when it mattered most. Don't forget Neesmith's late catch, and he had a great catch and shoot 3. Siakam made a great late 3. He also had a great block. Like watching Indiana play, that was unique in that no one really had a monster game, but they found a way to overcome OKC with a collective effort.
No, fair enough. I'm definitely looking forward to game 2. Game 1 definitely made me pick on everybody that was going into the finals. Like, oh, this is going to be a bad finals.
Right.
Started talking about everything but basketball, market size. Like, this is why I always say, just let it play out and enjoy the ride. Because obviously, as soon as I saw the matchup, I got excited. Like, the best defense versus the best offense were left in the playoffs. Like, yeah, give that to me 10 times out of 10.
Sign me up for another game like game 1. I'm here. If we're so lucky as basketball fans to get a few more games like that, or even luckier that we get more games like that and we end up with a game 7, sign me up for that.
Oh, absolutely. A more interesting basketball news. Hey, what's up, Cottrell? Keith, thank you for tuning in as well. The Pelicans came out and said they are moving forward with Zion. Now, my question to you, Mo, is that a vote of confidence? Like they still think Zion can be the guy? Or is that more of a let's say the right things because we can't get rid of him anyway?
I actually think that they believe that they're kind of stuck. They're a small market team. Nobody's breaking their neck to come to the Pelicans. I think they are going to go forward with Zion, which means they're not going to go anywhere. But yes, they're going to go forward with Zion, and Zion's going to do what he's done since he's been in the league. He might play 45 games. He's going to put up some nice numbers. He's going to miss a majority of games. They're not going to make the playoffs, and then they'll say the same thing next offseason. And it's like just do the same thing over and over and over. You know what I mean? They're really rolling with that, what insanity is, by doing the same thing over and over again. Zion Williamson is a transcendent talent. He's not a transcendent player. He certainly isn't a leader. And we talk about availability as being that's an ability. That's not a strength. That's not a big part of who he is. And everything he's done off the court as well dictates to you that he's not a franchise player. If they were smart, they would, never mind that you're a small market. I would move off this guy the first time he gets healthy. The first time he's completely healthy, he's on the next train smoking.
No, absolutely. It obviously the talent is there, but the commitment just doesn't seem to follow it. I still see people, and it's funny because I still see people try to argue like, oh, we should, our team should trade for Zion, a top 10 talent. I was like, I mean, like the talent probably is top 10, but will he ever realize it? And I don't think it's happening.
I want the Hornets to trade for him so him and LaMelo could miss a bunch of time together. I think that'll be fun.
They'd have like the funnest 30 games together just based off how great of a passer LaMelo is. You could find Zion no problem.
No, I was just gonna say they won't be that good in real life, but on 2K, man, the Hornets are gonna be hell.
Yeah, no, it's just always unfortunate to see, a player like Zion who has all the talent in the world to make it work and just doesn't have the commitment to seemingly follow up on it. So we'll see how it goes with him. Kyle, they couldn't get a third rounder for Zion right now. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Look, I'm just saying. I'm looking at a guy like Zion. I'm looking at a guy like Embiid. And as much as we kill Embiid for not being in good shape, Zion's younger than him, and he's never in shape as well. And sometimes he's in shape and he's still injured. Look. Sometimes a franchise, a general manager, a president, you have to look at the situation, look at the history, the individual you're dealing with, and call it. This isn't working. And if we keep holding on to this guy, why? Especially when you're in a league that there's a few teams that look at him and go, "Oh, we'd love to have him. He's a franchise player, high profile." Right? You move him. Let him be some other franchise's anchor. Let him destroy that franchise, and you can get assets for him.
You know what? I feel like hear me out. Let's send him to Miami. Either he's going to turn into the healthiest and the absolute greatest version of Zion and reach his full potential, or he's just going to completely fall apart and there's no in between. So I think, ironically, if he wants to reach his full potential, though, he would have to go somewhere just kind of very strict to keep him on track like Miami. That would make sense to me, but I know, I feel like for a fact he would not want to go there. As soon as he first time dealing with Pat Riley and the whole weight system that they have going on over there and how strict they are, he'd probably be like, "Nah, this ain't for me, fam."
You know that the Heat do a weekly weigh-in thing, right? They don't mess around. They're really stringent when it comes to nutrition, health, maintaining yourself. It would definitely be a sink or swim situation if Zion went to Miami. It could be the best thing for him, or it could be the beginning of the end for him.
No, absolutely. And speaking of trades, it seems like Phoenix's asking price, it keeps getting lower and lower with KD. And it sounds like we have some now 4 to 6 teams that are seriously interested in KD. So I guess at this stage in his career, Mo, what do you think Kevin Durant is worth on the trade market? Like a salary filler and a first, or a young player and a first? What do you think about the whole Kevin Durant trade situation?
I would say maybe a young player in the first. And I know that's crazy saying that because of some of the other trades that we've seen. But he's 37, man. He's 37. And I think people still think of him as the Kevin Durant from the last time they saw him with Golden State. And he's not that player. I know that he still can put up numbers. But when was the last time Kevin Durant dominated a series where you looked at him and said, that he hasn't done that in years? I'm sorry. Do I think he can help a team and be a difference maker on a team? Yes, but not as their best player. Not now. I think at this stage, he needs to go somewhere where he's not the man.
Say, no, fair enough. Okay. Morning, Conman, Carmike. Great to see you guys in the chat. I love the argument with Kevin Durant, because people will be like, well, he was the best defender in Phoenix. I'm like, well, I mean, somebody had to be
But he wasn't. Actually, the best defender in Phoenix was Royce O'Neal. It was not Kevin Durant. That's what I'm talking about. People talk about him in the present, but they're actually talking about in the past tense. Kevin Durant can't guard anybody. Not this Kevin Durant, especially anybody with a live handle. He can't not guard anybody in space. He can still be a good weak side defender, but as the primary defender, he gets eaten alive. That's what I'm talking about. There's the reality and there's perception. The perception is KD can still play defense at a high level. No, he can't. That's not true.
Say, Conman says he can be a closer. Yeah, say, if you can find a squad that just needs a closer and has the salary to match it, I think it would be perfect.
Right. You could send him to Houston. Like I said, it makes the most sense. Send him to Houston. Phoenix gets their picks back from Houston. Houston doesn't give up their core because you need those young dogs around Durant so that he could be a closer. That makes the most sense.
let's say Houston has perfect salary filler. Obviously, Fred VanVleet has a $44 million team option, which at that point you just need another $10 million for Kevin Durant, and they have plenty of guys that they can send at that point. Say, obviously, another team to look out for. They were rumored. San Antonio has Harrison Barnes and like Vassell or Johnson that they can send out to come close to that contract. But
what is Phoenix getting back from San Antonio? Because I better be getting back that second pick in the draft, right? I'm getting that back because why the hell would you want Harrison Barnes?
I was gonna say I say they got a lot of picks. They could either send like 14 in a future first. They could send number 2. I think the Spurs are interesting because they could straight up send you the second, or they could send you 14 and like maybe another extra first or 2 down the line. Like they have a ton of assets when it comes to draft picks to get creative with.
I have Fox, Castle, Vassell, and Wemby in the second pick in the draft. Why do I need a 37-year-old who's not part of my future? I don't. I don't do that. If I'm not pursuing Giannis, I'm not pursuing anybody. But I'm definitely not pursuing a 37-year-old.
Honestly, I completely agree. They should, kind of be patient and see if the Giannis thing goes somewhere before making a move.
Let the Knicks try to trade for Durant. The Knicks trading for Durant, it has Knicks written all over it. The only thing I wonder about is what do the Knicks have that Phoenix wants? Because they want Mikal Bridges back. They had him. They gave him away. They already had him. Like they're not wanting Bridges. They're not going to want OG because they're the same guy. You're not giving up Brunson. They definitely don't want Cat. I don't see how that trade ever gets made.
No, absolutely. The Knicks have a lot of like salaries to match these big contracts, but then you're just kind of like, well, they already sent out like all their first, so let's. Like, I'm not sure the young talent that's coming back for that, but yeah, and I think that's the other thing with KD that Conman just mentioned that a lot of people got to remember too. He is up for an extension next year, so you're trading a young pick, and then obviously you got to make sure to extend him as well. So
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
So yeah, pretty much you better be ready to not only give up those young players, but you're probably also giving them at least like another 80 to 100 million in an extension for a year or 2.
I just want to remind everybody one more time. The last time Kevin Durant was on a deep playoff run, a meaningful run where he won, he was on the Warriors. It's been a minute. He is not. Look, don't be fooled by numbers because we've had this discussion before. Bad teams have leading scorers. Don't be fooled by numbers. Look at your eyes tell you the truth. When he played against an elite player, when they barely made the playoffs, he got destroyed. He's not the same player. Anybody that thinks if we get Kevin Durant going to the finals, no, you're not. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I think the last series that I saw, like, I'll say I know I'll give KD some credit for that 2021 series against the Bucks.
He was terrific in that series, but again, that wasn't last year or it's been a minute, and they did lose that series. Like, yes, he was great in that series, but I also remember every series afterwards. Like, how about the Boston series? Remember that series?
Yep.
When Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum dog walked him.
Say, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where that where the sweepstakes for that go. And we know too now that speaking of the Knicks, Tibbs is out. He's gone. Now they got to find a new coach. Were you shocked at all by the firing of Tibbs?
I was surprised that they did it, but I was on board because I thought they should have. I said this before. I'll say it again. Thibodeau deserves all the credit in the world because he's the guy that went there when the Knicks were god-awful, and they'd been out god-awful for years. He not only made them respectable and relevant, he made them a contender. He deserves all the flowers for that. But everywhere he's been, he's actually been able to do that. At the same time, everywhere he's been, he hasn't sniffed the finals. There is a ceiling to the amount of success you can have if Tibbs is your head coach. And I think the Knicks have reached that ceiling.
I was kind of shocked more to say that they actually just straight up got rid of him. I thought at least since they just gave him an extension, they gave him a fresh $30 million, they'd at least be like, hey, man, we got a spot in the front office for you. I think Tibbs is a guy that's able to set a great culture, but, yeah, they just flat out said it's time to move on. So I think there must have been some deeper problems in that organization than just, him not making it to the finals.
Well, him and Leon Rose hadn't talked in months, so that's not good. Your head coach and GM don't communicate, and some of his players, they didn't like his rotations. Look, I like Tibbs as a coach, and I think that he's terrific at bringing up awful teams. Like, as soon as Tom Thibodeau got fired, the Wizards should have been on the phone like, Tom, we need you. Like, yes, send Tibbs to the Wizards, give him a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and he will have the Wizards in the playoffs.
If you're Phoenix for root for the Pacers, then maybe you get a trade partner in OKC. Oh, we're sending Kevin Durant back to OKC. All right, you know what?
Only happens, and I said this before. You and I talked about this. I said the only way KD goes back to OKC if the Thunder choke and don't win it all. If they win it all, there's no interest in Kevin Durant.
No, absolutely. I could very well see that, especially I feel like the Thunder's first call obviously is going to be to Milwaukee, and then sorry about that. And then if as soon as they hear, Giannis is not available, then it's going to turn to Kevin Durant. They're going to make that big move, and I think it'll be just real interesting to see how much they're willing to give up, because I feel like if there's a team that's willing to give up a lot of assets for Kevin Durant, it would probably be a desperate Thunder team if they get upset by the Pacers.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You bring up a great point. But if you're the Thunder, we're jumping ahead, but let's assume if they come up short for whatever reason, their first call is not going to be to Kevin Durant and his agent. Their first call is going to be to your Bucks. They're going to look to see if they can put together a package. And they're there's only 2 teams that really have all the assets and flexibility that Milwaukee would want in a trade partner. That's San Antonio and that's Oklahoma City. The only real question is, like I said, this series isn't over. And I do believe if Oklahoma City turns around and they end up winning this championship, they're not going to break up their core to bring in KD.
No, absolutely. Fair enough. It'll be it'll be real interesting to see. Yeah, KD wants $50 million per year. Good teams plan for the future. I completely agree, Conman. That would be the number that scares me, honestly.
You know who it wouldn't scare? You know who it wouldn't scare, Brett? It wouldn't scare the Wizards. And I know, no, hear me out. Remember, he's from the Baltimore area, right? So he could go home, get his money, and embrace his community. I mean, never mind the fact that they're going to get the brakes beat off him, but he can go home. He'll still be an all-star caliber player. And the Wizards will have somebody. He'll have a reason to have their fan base say, "Look, we do have KD." They'll come out and watch. I'm joking. I don't think he's going to go to the Wizards because I don't think he want to get the brakes beat off him at the end of his career. But money-wise, a team like the Wizards, they wouldn't hesitate to give him the money.
Say bold trade idea, and I don't know if I'm just messing with Kyle here, but obviously the Celtics could look to move on from multiple players. Obviously, they might look to move on from guys like Drew Holiday and Kevin Durant being a one-year rental. Could they possibly make a move for KD, use him to try to compete next year, and then if it doesn't work out, they can just move on from him, and he could just almost be like just Cap space gone, free cap space.
That's it. Here's why that's kind of interesting, right? Because Kevin Durant goes to Boston, and you still got Jaylen Brown. You move on from Drew. Al Horford's gone, but with your centerpieces being Jaylen Brown and Kevin Durant, and you still have Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and some of the other peripheral players, I think Boston is they're still a title contender. Correct? They're still a title contender.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if he's a 1-year rental, they would still be a title contender. And here's the interesting part. Let's say they go through the season. The Celtics don't win the title, but they have a nice little run with Durant. Tatum comes back a fully healthy Tatum in 2026. And Durant wants to come back for another year. Brown, Durant, Tatum. I'm just saying, because on that team, Kevin Durant wouldn't have to be the man. And I think that would work better for aging Kevin Durant. That he could play off of two stars like Tatum and Brown. Like they could do what they do throughout the game. Durant could be the closer, because I think that's the role that he's looking to play wherever his next stop is. Not necessarily being the leading scorer, but being the closer.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. And I really think that might be an idea that might intrigue Boston, just because, like, if it works out, great. And with Kevin Durant being 37, maybe you can convince him to sign for, a little bit of a cheaper deal to chase that championship. Because I think, maybe you can convince him. I was just about to say, to sign it just enough of a discount to stay under that second apron, or try to. If it doesn't work out, okay, let him walk. At the end of the day, this is a Celtics team that's really good at draft and developing. So I'm sure that if you gave them the extra cap space that comes moving on for multiple contracts like Drew Holiday and guys like that, especially since Holiday's under contract for another 3 years, there might be a team that's confident enough in themselves to be like, yeah, cool, we can make something work with an extra, $50 million in cap space.
I want to remind everybody, Brad Stevens is one of the smartest executives in the NBA. And while most of us are saying, like, well, look, Tatum's coming back in 2026. Holiday's probably going to be gone. Al's going to be gone. This will be I won't say a down year, but this will be a year where the Celtics are not title contenders. Maybe Brad Stevens says, why should it be a down year, Brett? Why can't I play around with some contracts and I can get Kevin Durant on a 1-year rental? I can have a conversation with Kevin Durant and his agent and say, hey, you know what? You guys come in at a lower number. Next year, when we have your birds rights, we can re-sign you for maybe a 2-year deal at a bigger number with Tatum returning, and we still won't hit the second apron. I'm just saying, we're doing hypotheticals. I don't know if that's completely out of the question. Look, I don't think Kevin Durant desires to go to Boston, and I'm sure they're not even thinking about him. But on this hypothetical, because you are without Jason Tatum's services for all of next season, I think Brad Stevens is like, no, we're still built to win now. And if I could get Kevin Durant, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him, and we're going to be the scariest team in the East next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It'll be really intriguing to see how the Kevin Durant sweepstakes turns out. I say it'll be interesting to see, kind of just in general, how everything turns out. Obviously, we'll have to see what's happening with Giannis first, because I don't think anything's happening until it's decided that he's staying or he's going. Which, from all the latest intel, it sounds like Giannis just isn't going anywhere. Yeah, I think this KD and his burners can stay away.
Kyle said his burners.
We got the finals. We got the NBA draft. Yeah, I completely agree, Gene. That was a fantastic game last night. I say NBA draft should be interesting, because I was just about to say I'm really intrigued to see what Philly does with number 3. I think the obvious choice for them is stay and just draft like Ace Bailey. But we know what, Daryl Morey can get a little impatient at times and want to try and get a big name. So I think he'll just chill at number 3. say I think he'll chill at number 3 and take Ace, but if I'm the 76ers and I'm Daryl Morey, I'm pretty much keep continuing to tell myself, listen, don't fall to the temptation. Don't use number 3 to go after some bigger name star, because right now that would be like a Kevin Durant deal, and I think they're just better off taking like Ace Bailey at that point.
Daryl Morey needs to ignore every instinct he's ever had. He needs to do the opposite of every instinct he's ever had. Because if he doesn't, they are going to trade that pick for a big name star. And they don't need that. Keep it simple, stupid. Draft Ace Bailey. Put him with McCain, Tyrese Maxey. There's your core. I know Embiid is still there. If you're not going to move Embiid, that's fine. But those 3 guys, I think they can help sustain Embiid's career if you use him differently. The real anchor on your team that you're not going to get rid of anytime soon is Paul George. That contract is not going away.
Yeah, I know they're going to be hoping that, hey, maybe Paul George was just injured last year. And, I think my concern with Paul George is it just seems like he's every year as the season wears on, he just seems to be injured pretty much every year. Even when he was on like the Clippers, even back in like when he first got signed in 2021, it's always dealing with an injury on this Western Conference Finals run. And then every single time the season progresses, he's just always more banged up than you'd think. So I think that Paul George will he kind of set a low bar, so I think year 2 will be better than year 1. I guess the real question is, how much better will Paul George be than last year?
Well, since you're going off of that bar, he's going to look great. If he plays 60 games and he gives you 20 points, 6 and 6, he's going to look amazing. Look, they had such an awful season last year. If Paul George comes back and he gives you competent play to go along with what Maxey, McCain, and a healthy Embiid can do, then you throw in Yabusele, Ace Bailey. The Sixers could go from one of the worst teams in the East to a top 4 team if things go the right way, or a top 3 team if things go the right way. The only question is, because we always have to bring this up, is if injuries are not a factor, if they can stay relatively healthy, would the Sixers be one of the top 4 teams in the NBA next year? My answer would be yeah. No, well, not in the NBA, but in the East. I think they would easily be a top 4 team in the East. Because remember, Boston is going to take a step back. I don't know what Indy. It's weird about Indy, right? Because Indiana could end up being the NBA champion. Does that mean they're going to turn around and have a 60-game win season next year? Doubtful. They're a unique team, but I think they're a unique team, like I said before, the same way the 2011 Mavericks were. They're a very unique team.
Say the Pacers have like perfectly built a team for a 16-game season, but you're not going to see them winning like 60 games in the regular season, but they built a great team when the postseason hits. Yeah, Paul George should be arrested for taking that bag. Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. I do love the mention of Utah. I feel like I know what they're going to do. They're just going to be in every single move this offseason because they always just seem to pop in, even if it's just like, yeah, no, there's a player swap, and then Utah ends up with 2 seconds. I'm like, why did Utah come into this picture?
I think I'm going to go with what Kyle just said in the chat. He said Ainge is waiting for the right time to strike. The problem with Danny Ainge is he's always waiting for the right time to strike. Like, he's always stockpiling picks. But you know what they don't do in Utah? They've yet to get a franchise player. When's the last time they had a franchise player? Maybe Donovan Mitchell? It's been a minute. Or somebody like a franchise player. I don't think Utah is going to do anything. I think in terms of impact, I'm sure they'll draft somebody. Are the Jazz going to be one of the better teams in the West next year? Absolutely not. The Utah Jazz will be in the lottery again next year. It's not one of those plays. What do we know about Utah automatically? Right off the top of the head, Brett. No free agent goes to Utah. There's no desire. No. Any top player in the league ever been traded to Utah? No, because it's Utah. They literally have to build through the draft. And I won't say they've had all misses, but the hits they've had, they haven't been the kind of hits you need to turn around your franchise. I like Lauri Markkanen as a player. I think you do too. Let me ask you this, though. What is Lauri Markkanen? He's not a franchise player. Is he a number 2? Is he a number 3? What do you think he is?
I think he's probably closer to a number 3, honestly. He's interesting because he had that one All-Star year, got paid, but then he was just really brutal last year. He did not have a good year last year. I'm starting to think, like, I don't think he's going to be a consistently All-Star level Lauri Markkanen, but I think he's probably somewhat closer to maybe that one year was it when he was on like Cleveland and he was really good for them and he was a solid number 3 option. Like, I think he could be a solid number 3 while providing some great rim protection as well. So it's just interesting with Utah because nobody's lining up to go there, and they get like one franchise guard like every decade, which they end up having to trade. So
right.
The 2000s, obviously, it was Darren Williams.
And they had, they had Williams and Boozer?
Yeah. And then, obviously, they went Donovan Mitchell and Gobert, so...
I think you hit the head on Markkanen. I think what Markkanen is what Porzingis is. He's a Porzingis. Put him somewhere where he's not the first, second option. I think he's a 3. You put him as a 3rd option on a contender, and he's a much more impactful player. But as long as he stays in Utah and they're trying to build around him or make him one of their centerpieces, they're never going to be any good.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I'd say they also could be a team that might be willing to take on a bad contract if you give them enough picks. So honestly,
I just saw the chat. Codman said, "Quiet as kept. If a max type player is offered a max, they will come. Not to Utah. Not to Utah. What max type player? You know what kind of player might come to Utah? Paul George might come to Utah. But give me. I'm talking about a top flight player. Donovan Mitchell couldn't wait to get out of there. You think Anthony Edwards would ever go to Utah? Ever, never, ever, never, ever. It's not happening. Who is going to Utah? Nobody's going to Utah. Ever. You'll never see it. Utah is the only team in the NBA where money doesn't talk. It won't make a difference. Nobody is going to that wasteland. Utah is basically the NBA version of an apocalyptic world. Nobody's going there. It is dead land.
And the thing, too, is if you're like a max contract player, you're probably a max contract player to multiple teams, and that kind of hurts because for a small market, in order to attract like a max contract player, you need something. You need a superstar to attract them. You need like stability to attract them. And right now, the Jazz just don't feel like they have either. Like,
what's the appeal? You might get to meet Karl Malone. What's the appeal? what is the appeal? There's no appeal. There's no appeal.
I think to me the most telling sign is even a team like Milwaukee with Giannis wasn't necessarily attracting big names in free agency. They obviously got like Drew Holiday and Dame, but obviously they had to trade for both of those guys. And we saw even like, for example, LeBron in Cleveland. He wasn't attracting really many big stars to come play with him in Cleveland.
Facts.
They had to trade for Kevin Love.
Nobody wanted to go to Cleveland, right?
Yeah, like Jakeem Noah said, who wants to take a vacation to Cleveland? So,
I've been to Cleveland before.
I took my high school senior class trip to Cleveland.
I had a good, just for the record, I actually had a nice time in Cleveland, but it didn't wow me. Look, there are just certain places or destinations in the NBA that I'm just being real. Guys don't go there by choice. and one of them is number 1 on the list is Utah. Number 2 on the list, Sacramento. Number 3 on the list, probably Cleveland. Number 4 on the list, Charlotte. Nobody's going to the Hornets. You know when you go to the Hornets? When your career is over. Or when you're a young player and you want your career to be over, you go to the Hornet. Like there are just places that are not destination points. And the problem is, if you're Utah and there's a big name free agent, let's say, for example, if De'Aaron Fox was a free agent, he's not going, and Utah wanted him, or New York wanted him, or Philly wanted him, or LA wanted him. You know who's not going to get him? Utah. They're not going to get him.
I would say they're a team that, you use to raise your market value. Like, well, oh, you're only offering 25. Well, Utah over here is offering you 30, even though you're just like, yeah, you're not going there, but I see what you're doing here. It's funny. It also sounds like another trade that could possibly happen is it sounds like the Kings are going to move on from going to try to move on from at least one or two of their for lack of a better term, big three. So I guess do you think I think the guy that gets moved out is DeMar DeRozan. Do you have any spot you'd want to see a guy like DeMar go?
I think DeMar, because of his ability to score still, even in his early 30s, I think DeMar could fit in a lot of places. But I think at this stage, I would want DeMar as a guy coming off the bench. Do you know what I mean? Not a bench player per se, but like my instant offense guy coming off the bench, because he is a ball dominant player and he's best when the ball's in his hands. So I think he can fit for a lot of teams' needs in terms of scoring punch off the bench. But he could end up in a lot of places other than Utah. But he can end up in a lot of places. The Lakers could use that kind of firepower. They wanted him a couple of years ago, but they made a choice, or LeBron made a choice. He took Russ over DeRozan, which, whatever. I've always liked DeMar, but he's more of an ISO type player. At this stage in his career, like I said, I think he has more value in a lesser role.
I know I heard Shaq say this too. I don't think this is fully true. I think a lot of destinations are now, similar. That, it's not like an old league where only like a handful of destinations are shown on TV. But when it comes to destinations, I still think off the court stuff matters. Like, can you build businesses there, marketing opportunities, endorsements, sponsorships? So I think, I think the playing field is more even compared to, like, let's say the 90s. But I still think that some of the off the field stuff does indeed matter for these guys.
It makes, remember, quality of life matters as well. I'm just being real. Like the destination thing, you can't say it doesn't matter because it's 2025. When's the last time Utah ever brought in a big name free agent? Just give me the one big name free agent they brought in. You can't, because it doesn't happen. What happens in Utah is big name players leave there. That's what happens in Utah. As far as DeRozan goes, yeah, you can say he's not coming off the bench. I remember Melo saying he wasn't coming off the bench either at one point. Guess what ended up happening? He realized where he was in his career, and he came off the bench. Now, DeMar DeRozan could go to a really bad team, and he can start, and he can put up numbers. But if he wants to be on a contender and win a title or compete for a title, he's not starting.
I saw the most craziest DeMar DeRozan take, and it was so funny. Somebody was talking about, yeah, DeMar DeRozan was a below average defender, and somebody commented, he's like, nah, in his prime, DeMar DeRozan was a top 15 wing defender in the league. I'm like,
no, he wasn't.
If he was a top 15 wing defender in the league, like, Toronto would have never looked to get rid of him.
Look, I love DeMar. Defense is not his forte. Does he compete better at it? Sure, but he's not. He was never a great defender. That is not a factual statement.
No,
right.
No.
Well, right. But the answer to that question also is Stockton and Malone were drafted to Utah. They didn't go there as free agents. They were drafted to Utah. And Stockton didn't leave. But you know what? Malone did leave. Malone left. He went to the Lakers. He didn't finish his career there. Malone left. That was a bad example, Con Man. You still didn't give me an example of a big name free agent going there willingly because you can't. Nobody goes to Utah on purpose. If you go to Utah, it's because you made a wrong turn. That's the only way you end up in Utah.
No, I like I said, I do. I respect DeMar. I think he's a great scorer, but yeah, no, it'll be interesting. Obviously, I could see a team. It's funny, right? Because I think they need like help from scoring at the guard position, but could a team maybe like the Orlando Magic, who lack like any semblance of scoring in the half court, go after him? Because at this point, I just think they could use anybody that could put the ball in the basket in a half court set.
I think he can help a team like Orlando, but I don't know because his game is so ISO centric that he would be a good fit with Paolo and Franz. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see Paolo sitting there being content watching DeRozan dribble the air out the ball and then attack.
No, and that's fair. Obviously obviously when it comes to DeMar, he plays just a very ISO heavy style. It's funny because he's shown he can play make. Like Pop brought that out of him when he was in San Antonio. So it'd be fun to see if another team tries to bring more out of that, because it just seems like obviously playing on the Bulls in Sacramento, they just kind of went, yeah, just do you, which at that point he's just going to try to score every time. So
I mean, he averaged 5 assists a game. Like, he showed that he's a playmaker. He could be a playmaker, but I'm just saying that the Kings are really bad, and they're really bad because they make moves like they've made. Like, you switch out De'Aaron Fox for a combination of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. It's not a knock against those two, but that's not an upgrade. That's not an upgrade. I don't understand the moves that the Kings make. Look, we always talk about that. There's a reason why bad franchises remain bad. Like, if we judge guys on talent, I've always said this, on talent, Zach LaVine's probably a top 10, top 12 player on talent. But how his talent is put out there on the court, how he uses it, he's not anywhere near that. He's not. DeMar's terrific, but he is 35. He's on the other side of his prime. Why do you make that trade? Those two were teammates in Chicago, and that wasn't a pretty thing. But the Kings are like, we can make it work here. And it's frustrating to watch a franchise like that because they stay in NBA purgatory. I like Domantas Sabonis as a player, Brett. I think you do too. But I think we both agree he's not a dominant center. He's not the kind of guy you go, we can build around Domantas. He's not that dude. He's a complimentary star. The problem is you put a complimentary star with 2 other complimentary stars. Like, if you could take the 3 of them, you could go get one superstar. But none of them are on that level. And that's why the Kings are where they are all the time. Like, they make moves like that are maddening, and it doesn't make sense. And I love Sabonis, but he's going to waste the prime of his career being the best player in Sacramento and going nowhere.
I can't even imagine, like, Kings fans. Like, imagine in 2020 you told them, yeah, both Fox and Halliburton are going to be top 10 point guards in the league. And they get so excited, and then you're like, yeah, by the way, you're going to turn them into Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis, who's probably going to get traded. It's funny because I still said this at the time. I'll say it again. I think at the time, like, the Sabonis move made a lot more sense than people are going to give it credit for now because of how Hallie's, like, blossomed. But I also, once again, I just don't think he blossoms the same way if he stays in Sacramento. So, it's interesting because now people are blasting, saying, like, oh, people were saying at the time the trade was good. Well, yeah, at the time it was very uncertain if Halliburton and Fox were going to play well together, and they really didn't have that great of chemistry together. So, at the sense, the trade made sense at the time, but obviously Halliburton, to his credit, has done a fantastic job of making the Kings just look completely stupid.
I agree. Let me answer something to comment real quick. No, Carman, you're not correct. Karl Malone didn't leave the Jazz to go play with Steve Nash. Steve Nash wasn't part of the Lakers. He wasn't on that team. You're out of context. He wasn't part of the roster. Steve Nash came years later. Karl Malone was on the Lakers team that got the brakes beat off of him in the finals against the 03-04 Pistons. Steve Nash was not a member of those Lakers. By the way, Karl Malone upgraded. He left Utah, and guess what? He played in the NBA Finals. When's the last time Utah's played in the NBA Finals?
Stockton and Malone, like
1998. Right. It's been a minute. You know why it's been a minute? Nobody goes to a wasteland.
Say bad teams are also bad because they overvalue their own talent.
Facts.
Say Brooklyn Nets fans right now. I saw like Brooklyn Nets fans fighting for their lives. They're like, oh, we shouldn't trade Cam Johnson. He just had his career best year. I'm like, yeah, exactly why you should trade him. You trade the role player when the value is at its highest, not when it's at its lowest. Like, the Thunder have a dynasty because they traded their 29-year-old MVP candidate. Like, don't get attached to a 29-year-old 3-and-D role player. But I think Sabonis is the exact kind of that was the Gary Payton Lakers, but I think Sabonis is the kind of star, like the kind of star level player that would end up in Utah. Like, not quite a superstar, but a star that can go there, have some fun, put up some good numbers, and just be beloved by the community.
Yeah, look, that's the kind of star that will go to Utah. I agree with you 100%. But that's not a superstar. That's a star. That's the kind of guy that will go to Utah. I'm talking about a franchise difference maker. Like, we're early in Wemby's career, but let's say Wemby came up as a free agent. You know where Wemby's not going? He's not going to Utah.
Yeah, and you know what? No, I was just gonna say, at the end of the day, I think that's why I do agree with, like, Ainge is gonna be patient. He's waiting to strike because I think he's hoarding all these picks because he's waiting to draft his franchise guy. And I think once he get him, maybe they win the lottery for AJ Dimebasta, or they win the Boozer sweepstakes down the road. Once they get that star player, I think that's what he's saving his picks for, because I think that's when he goes all in.
I just hope Danny Ainge is alive when they get this franchise player. I hope Danny Ainge is part of the Jazz. You know what I mean? I hope he's still part of Jazz management and is still alive when this franchise player drops into the Utah Jazz's hands. And by the way, Kyle, yes, that's the Gary Payton Lakers. That was the Gary Payton who was no longer the glove. That Gary Payton that played for the Lakers was the mitten.
Oh, Gary Payton's so fun. I love Gary Payton all-time debates. It's so funny because they'll try to bump him up because he has a ring like the 2006 Miami Heat ring. Are we really doing this right now? Come on.
Sadly, the Gary Payton that was on the Heat was even worse than the Gary Payton that was on the Lakers. Like, that was not the glove, man. Like, he got a ring. But when we're talking about great players, I'm talking about when you're in your prime. Gary Payton in 96 balled out, but they didn't win a title. It's like saying, well, Mitch Richmond's got a ring. Yes, he sat on the bench and stole a ring. I believe it was the year that the Lakers took out the Nets. Just saying.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no. Ironically, those Lakers, they were showing the biggest odds for a NBA Finals team in in NBA history. On that list, the only overwhelming favorite Finals team that lost was those 04 Lakers. Obviously.
Oh man, that is a painful memory, and it's painful because if you watch that series, the one game we won, we should have lost that one too. We should have lost that one too. Like they completely dominated the Lakers. Like I believe the last game of that series, the Lakers scored 65 points.
Yeah, it just I think like it almost felt like everything went wrong that series. Like it's funny because Shaq still put up like 26 or 27 on good numbers, but Kobe couldn't, shoot efficiently to save his life. Prince had that man in jail. Gary Payton just like refused to shoot. It was a huge issue. They were just ignoring Gary Payton because he didn't want to shoot.
Chauncey Billups abused Gary Payton. He abused Gary Payton so bad that Phil Jackson went back to Derek Fisher. He was Chauncey and Chauncey Billups abused Fisher too. Like they had no one that could guard Billups. And credit to Larry Brown, just a great coach, a great defensive mind. He said, "I'm going to put Tayshaun Prince on the island with Kobe," and he had one rule: we're going to hedge. We're not going to let Kobe ever touch the paint, and everything's going to be a contested jump shot. To perfection, they executed that.
Yeah, and you know what? Everyone wants to talk about how Steph Curry runs off a million screens. Shout out to my guy Rip Hamilton for being an absolute nightmare in the mid-range by like consistently running off these elevator screens from the Wallaces.
One of the hardest guys to guard in the league because Rip is in constant motion. Yeah, underrated player, Rip Hamilton.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep up with him too when it's like someone as strong as Ben Wallace setting a screen. Like he would make sure to pick you off, and either you're just behind, you're giving up that easy midi, or you're gonna have to switch your center onto Rip. At that point, it's over. At that point,
Shaq did have good numbers, but Ben Wallace outplayed him in key moments. Like Ben Wallace just outworked him, which isn't that hard to do, but he outworked him. That front, when you look at that front lineup, how long they were: Prince, Wallace, and Wallace. And then you had Rip, who was a respectable defender, and Billups was a really good defender. Like, and then they bring in Lindsey Hunter, and Lindsey Hunter guards you 94 feet. Like that squad was built to play defense.
I say, and to their credit, they got somebody who did their homework on Shaq in backup center. I think it was Elvin Campbell, the old backup center for the Lakers. They brought him in.
That's right. Yes, good call. Facts.
Yeah, I feel like that must have helped, having somebody with that much of an insight on how the Lakers ran things. And also, like, to the Lakers' credit, I know Karl Malone was cooking until the injury, so I would have loved to see if I don't think they win the series, but I would have loved to see if he came into that series fully healthy, how much if it would have changed much.
Yeah, I believe he got injured in the San Antonio series, and it left him gimpy. I mean, look, he wasn't prime Karl Malone on the Lakers anyway. I believe that year he averaged something like, I want to say he averaged like 16 and 10 or something like that. This wasn't Karl Malone the mailman. This is more like the UPS man. He was really good. He just wasn't that dude.
No, absolutely. Saying that's all the time we have for today, Mo. That went by really quick, honestly.
Sure.
Anything you want to say before we get up and out of here?
No, we had fun. We always have fun in the morning show. Appreciate the lively chat with Kyle. Con man, you're the best. We would love you to come on and one with me and Brett and chop it up. Always love talking hoops with you. So I appreciate you guys so much. Hey, thank everybody for joining us this morning. Make sure you check out all the great content we have coming your way at Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire Network. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Conman, if you ever want to come on to And One, open invitation, you're more than welcome. Would love to have you. Kyle, Key, Gene, everybody who hopped in. Definitely appreciate it. We thank you for tuning in this morning, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.